This is a tale of the future. For centuries, the Sol hegemon has ruled uncontested the greatest swath of human space in the galaxy. Earth is long abandoned, its great cities reduced to overgrown ruins as mankind has sought new homes and new dominions amongst the stars. But now the beating heart of the Sol hegemon has been convulsed by revolution. The rebels claim they fight for freedom and equality, but are they truly any better than those whom they name oppressor? But on the fringe of human space, worlds remain untouched by war and revolt. It is to this region that the crew of the Babylon Rocker have come, seeking peace and escape, both from the chaos of revolution and the dark specters of the past. On the fringe, there is hope. On the fringe is freedom and light and opportunity. But with such freedoms and opportunities come many dangers, some of the future, others of the past that they seek to avoid. Such is the nature of the wild edge of human space. There lies adventure. There goes Babylon Rocker.
Inquisitor, with all respect, is Exterminatus the only solution?
Admiral Spire, it is said that heresy is like a tree. Its roots lie in darkness, while its leaves wave in the sun. You can prune away its branches, even cut the tree to the ground, but it will grow again, ever stronger. Such is the nature of heresy, and why it is so difficult to destroy. Some may question my right to destroy a world of 10 billion souls. But those who truly understand realize that I have no right to let them live. No sacrifice is too great. No treachery too small.
Last time, we saw the Crane Crab War and the political fallout, where the Emperor was so discredited that, after kidnapping his son, the Gozoku was able to maneuver things to its satisfaction so that by the time that his son, Hante Kusada, assumed the throne, they were the real masters of the Empire. Now that they've got the power, what did they do with it? Well, first we have to address exactly how this cabal was organized. Apart from the three founders, Shiba Gaiju Shiko, Doji Raigu, and Mayushi Atsuki, very few actual known members of the Gozoku have ever been named. The only significant one apart from the founders was this one young courtier named Otomo Reiju. He's more significant towards the end of this story, but it does show that not even the imperial household was immune to being corrupted by the Gozoku cabal. Obviously, as the champions of their respective clans, both Raigu and Atsuki could command the loyalty of most, if not all, of their followers. It's a lot less clear with Shiba Gaiju Shiko. Again, it's never mentioned what either the Phoenix Clan champion or the Council of Elemental Masters thought about the matter, or even just how involved they were. I'm mostly working off the assumption that given how insular the Phoenix generally were, the clan leadership just figured Shiba Gaiju Shiko could do what he liked as long as it didn't inconvenience them. So I think it is safe to assume that Gaiju Shiko did have some significant backing and resources from the Phoenix Clan, and mostly represented the Phoenix Clan's interests, such as they were, in this political machination. At any rate, each of the three clans that the three founding members represented each came to fill a specific role in running the Gozoku conspiracy. As an imperial scribe, Gaiju Shiko had many connections within the imperial government and the bureaucracy. As such, he, and presumably by extension the Phoenix Clan, handled the administrative aspects of the empire during the Gozoku's reign. His job was mostly to make sure that the administration of the empire ran smoothly. and likely played a key role in vetting policies that he worked out with the other members. Raigu and the Crane clan handled public affairs. There were some within the court that were savvy enough to realize that something had changed by the time Hante Kusada became puppet emperor of Rokugan, and so it was the job of the Crane clan, as the unparalleled masters of diplomacy and court intrigue, to maintain the pretense that everything was just fine in the empire, that there was nothing at all suspicious going on. As for Atsuki, as head of the Scorpion clan, he handled the twin jobs of intelligence and muscle. The Scorpions, being the spies par excellence of Rokugan, would keep an especially close eye on affairs in the Empire, especially anyone or anything that might pose a threat to the Gozoku conspiracy. If necessary, they would also eliminate said threats. And of course, the eliminations would happen in just such a way as to avoid any suspicion falling on either the Scorpion clan or their secret allies. So then, how exactly did the Gozoku function in its role as secret masters of the Empire? Actually, pretty well. One of the first things that Shiba Gaiju Shiko did upon the establishment of Otomo Tohojatsu's regency was to establish a new vassal family within the imperial household known as the Nasu family. Their job was to act as overseers of the imperial bureaucracy, both ensuring that everything went smoothly and keeping an eye out for any sort of dissent within the ranks. With a weak regent and an even weaker emperor to follow him, none of the other families within the imperial household could challenge them on the administrative level. With this new stranglehold over the imperial bureaucracy, the Gozoku's early years were dedicated to improving trade and infrastructure within the empire. Roads were improved and trade reform was encouraged, thus increasing the prosperity of the average imperial subject. So at least the commoners, if any had any idea or suspicions of what was going on in the capital, were content enough to keep quiet about it. However, by achieving a monopoly of political power within the empire, the Gozoku proved a perfect breeding ground for corruption within the government. Where once clans, families, and individuals had competed with one another for influence within the court, now the only way to get ahead in Rokugani politics was to basically suck up to the minions of the Gozoku. And of course, the Phoenix, Crane, and Scorpion tended to be favored over those of other clans. And the new Emperor Kusada could do nothing but sit on his throne and act as his new puppet masters wished him to act, decree what they wished to be decreed, and endure the secret humiliation of being paid homage to by all the Empire, even though in reality he knew himself to be nothing more than a figurehead. Not only did the Gozoku retain a stranglehold of the imperial government, he could not turn to any of the clans for help. Another of the Gozoku's first acts was to arrange the demotion of hundreds of its opponents, for there were many within the empire far too close to the inner circles of power for the conspiracy's existence to be a complete secret. In order to silence or discredit any opposition these individuals might seek to raise against them, the Gozoku had their puppet emperor declare all of their opponents to be Ronin, masterless, honorless, and thus untrustworthy in the eyes of society. No clan, major or minor, was spared from this purge. Even the three clans that formed the Gozoku. After all, the example of Daidoji Nobuso demonstrated that even they could not count on complete loyalty from every single samurai of the Crane, Scorpion, and Phoenix clans. The most prominent of these newly made Ronin was Mochihime, daimyo of the Matsu family. The story goes that when the time came for her to be stripped of her rank, Mochihime removed her haori, a sort of fancy Japanese overcoat, and flung it to the ground at Emperor Kusada's feet, declaring, "I am Mochihime. I may no longer be Matsu. I may no longer be a lion, but I am and will always be a samurai. When you wish to have my daisho, you can pry it from my dead fingers." Now that she was no longer of aristocratic rank, Mochihime changed her given name to Mochiko, and went on the road as yet another Ronin. However, there were a few opponents that the Gozoku could not so easily get rid of, namely Bayushi Junzen, first cousin to Bayushi Atsuki. Thanks to his close blood ties to the clan champion, Junzen had very high standing within the clan and was one of the few willing or able to challenge Atsuki's decisions on various clan policies. He was also well aware of the Gozoku conspiracy even before the kidnapping of Hantei Kusada. After all, it is very, very hard for Scorpion to hide secrets from their own. Clearly, Junzen was regarded as too dangerous to be simply busted down to the status of a lowly ronin. After all, the distinction between a samurai and a ronin is merely a matter of honor, and most Scorpion don't give a rat's ass about honor. Luckily, Atsuki discovered another way to neutralize his troublesome cousin. He was able to forge false documents proving that Junzen was of strong Yogo descent, and thus a bearer of the Yogo family curse. Because of the potential danger such a curse could inflict, such individuals were not allowed to hold high status within the Scorpion clan. Thus, Junzen was stripped of his status and sent to a small outpost on the Scorpion Crab border. And so the Emperor came to the throne bereft of any allies that he could rely on to challenge the Gozoku's grip on power. The minor clans, even together, were too weak to matter. The Crane, Scorpion, and Phoenix clans were arranged against him, and even without the purging of any prominent figures opposed to the Gozoku, he could not look to the other three great clans for assistance. The Dragon, as ever, remained studiously neutral. As for the Crab, clan champion Hida Ichido had died shortly after the end of the Crane Crab War under mysterious circumstances. His successor, Hida Sakura, was determined to wash his hands of imperial court politics. Like most of his clan, Sakura felt that by involving themselves in the intrigues of Hantei Fujiwa, and thus getting involved in the Crane Crab War in the first place, the Crab Clan had been distracted from their real duty, guarding the southern border against the Shadowlands. As such, he wished to focus on rebuilding his clan's strength after the war and consolidating their gains. The most important of these would be the fortification of Clearwater Village. On the advice of the new Yasuki daimyo, Yasuki Kaname, Sakura entrusted the great architect Kayu Harata with the task of building immense land and sea walls surrounding Clearwater Village. Now that they possessed the largest trading port in the Emerald Empire, the Crab Clan were determined that they would never lose control of this vital strategic location. Construction of the walls began in 402. The land wall was completed in 409 and the sea wall in 412. Kayu Harata would die a year later in 413, and his ashes would be interred inside his great creation. That just left the Lion Clan. In 401, clan champion Mitsuyuki died without an heir, and perhaps Emperor Kusada entertained faint hopes, for his successor turned out to be Matsu Itagi, the younger brother of the recently deposed Matsu daimyo, Mochiko. Unfortunately, while Itagi did possess fervent loyalty for the imperial family and the spine that Mitsuyuki had lacked, Itagi was also short-sighted politically. All he really cared about was emphasizing and maintaining the power and greatness of his own clan. In essence, the new clan champion was a stereotypical Matsu brawler, fearsome in battle, but not much going on between his ears. The Gozoku needn't worry about him. But now we come to the moment a lot of you have been waiting for. The 5 Nights of Shame and the destruction of the Snake Clan. But to explain this, we first must wind back the clock a few decades and go back to the beginning of the clan and its founder, the Shugenja and former Emerald Magistrate, Chuda. Originally an Emerald Magistrate from the Phoenix Clan, Chuda had dedicated his entire life to hunting down and destroying those who employed evil magic. This did not cease when he was made daimyo of his own minor clan after saving a previous emperor from a possessed assassin. If anything, his obsession with destroying Maho Tsukai became the raison d'etre of the Snake Clan. As such, Chuda was often away from home pursuing evil magic users, leaving his wife, a former Kuni Shugenja named Reiko, to raise their son, Chuda Yoharu. On one such mission, Chuda uncovered and killed a corrupted member of the Kitsu family. Before he died, the tainted Shugenja proclaimed, "The darkness you forgive will lead to your family's destruction." It was a curse that proved all too prophetic. In order to better identify, hunt down, and destroy Maho Tsukai, the Snake Clan had dedicated itself to the study of evil magic. After all, understanding the foe is the first step to defeating them. But such evil knowledge is a pernicious thing. One day, while Chuda was away on yet another mission, his wife Reiko and son Yoharu were attacked by vengeful Maho Tsukai. Desperate to save herself and her son, Reiko employed the same Maho as her attackers. When Chuda eventually discovered what had happened, he was shattered by the revelation of his wife's seeming corruption. But in the end, he could not bring himself to kill the woman he loved. Chuda became broken in mind and spirit and ultimately retired to a monastery, passing leadership of the clan to Yoharu. For the next few decades, life passed uneventfully for the Snake Clan as they settled into their new home in the Dragonheart Plain, a small area of grassland situated between the forests of the Phoenix Clan and the mountains of the Dragon Clan. Chuda Yoharu led the clan without incident, as did his son Chuda Choro. However, Reiko's initial use of Maho proved to be the very beginning of what the tainted Kitsu Shugenja had warned of. Without Chuda's unbending moral guidance, his clan began to blur the line between studying Maho so as to destroy its practitioners and studying Maho in order to use it. After all, is it not a valid tactic to fight fire with fire? However, for the most part, the Snake Clan's growing corruption remained at bay and behind the scenes. Under the leadership of Yoharu and Choro, the Snake Clan became quite respectable in Rokugan, garnering a well-deserved reputation as skilled hunters of Maho Tsukai. By the 5th century, it was not uncommon to see a Snake Clan Shugenja in the service of officials like Emerald Magistrates, protecting their masters from evil magic. But then in 294, possibly as a result of experimenting with Maho, Chuda Choro fell deathly ill. All feared for his life, none more so than his 2 children, his son and heir Chuda Tamihei and his daughter Chuda Shinobu. Tamihei was a gifted Shugenja, and yet all his efforts, supernatural and otherwise, to save his father's life came to nothing. Tamihei became consumed with regret, cursing himself for his weakness and his failure to save his father. In the end, the heir to the Snake Clan was reduced to little more than prayer. Prayer fueled by fear of his father's death, regret at his failure, and the desire to be a powerful enough Shugenja to save him. But these two came to nothing. Consumed by frustration at his failure, Tamehei subsequently encountered an Eta, a man of the lowest social class, and vented his rage upon the innocent man, drawing the unfortunate wretch's blood with his sword. Though Tamehei had no way of knowing it, his actions had brought him to the attention of an evil beyond his comprehension. Many centuries ago, when Fulang the Mad God was still clawing his way out of Jigoku, he came across 3 mortal men who had entered the festering pit with their hearts filled with mercy. Fulang had killed these 3 men, then dripped blood from his own veins onto their flensed skulls, invoking terrible prayers in the name of 3 deadly sins: fear, desire, and regret. Thus, from the 3 skulls arose 3 terrible spirits, the Shuten Doji. They had participated in the Great War against the 8 founding kami and the newborn Emerald Empire, and had disappeared after the defeat of their dread master. The only way that a Shuten Doji may be summoned is if a prayer is uttered motivated by the sin that the particular Shuten Doji represents, and then blood from a mortal wound must be shed. This Chuda Tamihei, however unwittingly, had done. Thus he awoke the Shuten Doji of regret. This most malignant of spirits had haunted Dragonheart Plain for generations, but, ignorant of its true nature, the Snake Clan had always ignored it, writing it off as a minor evil spirit not worth bothering about. Seeing an opening at last after centuries of its solitary haunting, the Shuten Doji began to appear to Chuda Tamihei with many an offer, everything from power to wealth to love to forgiveness. For Tamihei's regret-fueled prayer had been incomplete. In order to fully manifest and unleash its full power, the Shutendoji needed him to complete the prayer. For 7 years, Tamihei resisted the evil spirit's temptations. But then, after 7 years of suffering his strange illness, in 401, Chuda Choro summoned his son and asked to be given peace and mercy. That was the final straw. Tamihei broke and called forth the Shutendoji of Regret so that it might teach him all of its dark and terrible powers. Powers that it pinky promised were the only way to save his father now. For 7 days, Tamihei studied the darkest powers at the metaphorical feet of the Shutendoji, only to find that when he was done, his father had already died. Tamihei vowed to use his new mighty power to become immortal and bring his father back, but it's unknown just how sincere he might have been, given by this point he was fully under the malignant spirit's sway. Certainly his desire for power was still there, and the Shutendoji of Regret told him that the only way that he could have full access to its might was to once again spill blood. This time, noble blood. Claiming that it was all in the service of bringing their father back to life, he convinced his sister Chuda Shinobu to be the sacrifice. That horrible deed done, Tamihei gained the full powers of the Shutendoji, at the price of being fully possessed by it. At this point, there seemed little distinction to where his personality, or what was left of it, ended and that of the malignant spirit began. From there, the new clan champion of the snake began to spread his possession to all members of his clan. Each of the Shutendoji spread its influence through one of the senses. In Regret's case, that was sound. Anyone who heard Tamihei speak, or anyone that had been possessed by him speak, became possessed themselves. And so, like a virus, Regret spread its influence until nearly every inhabitant of Dragonheart Plain was its puppet. Everyone from the Chuda family to the lowliest samurai and servant. There was no telling just how far the spirit might have spread its influence. Possibly it could have easily taken over the empire, maybe even the world. But then the gods chose to intervene, quite literally. The story goes that Jizo, the Fortune of Mercy, was fully aware of what was going down, and so she found in Dragonheart Plain the one person that was immune to the Shutendoji of Regret, a young deaf boy. She gave the boy a magic hammer and somehow convinced him to strike a temple bell with it. The resultant sound, clear and pure, echoed across the land, and somehow, through mystic ways only known to themselves, reached the ears of the Council of Elemental Masters, the rulers of the Phoenix clan. The Master of Water used a scrying spell to determine what was going on, and soon enough, the council was fully aware of what must be done. Unlike the ignorant Snake Clan, they recognized immediately the nature of the enemy they must deal with. Unless they acted now, the Shutendoji of Regret would begin spreading its influence beyond Dragonheart Plain, and the Empire itself would be at risk. Within days of this revelation, a massive Phoenix army led by the Elemental Masters themselves marched westward into the Dragonheart Plain. The corrupted army of the Snake Clan was ready to face them, but not only were they outnumbered, they were effectively outmatched. Against them was arranged the Shiba family, the warriors of the Phoenix, master swordsmen to a man. Backing them up were the Isawa, the greatest magic users of the Empire, led by the Council of Five themselves. In the opening gambit, the Phoenix sent forth a small army of Ronin that they'd hired for the purpose. When the Maho Tsukai of the Snake Clan wiped them out, the Phoenix now had an understanding of how their enemies fought and how they could be bested. This ruthless act set the tone for the rest of the Five Nights of Shame. For this was to be no battle, but a massacre. Exercising the full might of his power, the Elemental Master of Air caused all wind within the battle space to cease. The air was rendered still. Sound could not carry. And just like that, the Shutendoji of Regret had lost its most powerful weapon. From there, it was a slaughter. 3,000 Snake Clan samurai died in utter silence as the Master of Air stifled the very breath in their lungs. But the Snake Clan would not die easily. For 5 days, complete silence reigned in Dragonheart Plain, even as the earth was soaked with blood and the flesh of dead men. From the very beginning, the Phoenix Clan had known what this would require. This was a campaign of extermination. Not a single member of the Snake Clan could be allowed to survive, lest a remnant of the Shutendoji of Regret escape with it. And so, from the borders of Dragonheart Plain to Shirochuda, the castle of the Snake Clan itself, the Phoenix Army marched, killing every man, woman, and child they found. By the end of the 5th night, the Snake Clan had ceased to be. As for the Shutendoji of Regret, it was hunted down in the days following the 5 Nights of Shame by an imperial magistrate of the clan, Isawa Tsuneo. At the cost of his own life, he bound the vile entity into a tomb that he had prepared specifically for the purpose, covered in warding seals so that the creature could never again escape. Of course, the genocide of a clan, even a minor one, could not be kept secret, and soon all the Empire was in shock that the Phoenix Clan, normally the most pacifistic of the great clans, would commit such a deed. Emperor Kusada sent a message to the leadership of the Phoenix Clan demanding an explanation. All he received in reply were 2 words: never again.